Hi there. I've recorded this video twice now, and twice my editing software decided no. So, as the old saying goes, third time's the charm. As a filmmaker, physical media is really important to me. In terms of filmic history and in terms of not letting everything go to the streaming gods who will betray you, in the way that Disney Plus has made a $1 billion deal with OpenAI, or that Netflix and Hulu charge you even if they give you ads. It's really important to physically own the things you love so they don't get taken away from you or overcharged. And so why don't we just go through all of my DVDs in alphabetical order? And some of these are sourced from my mom, who has immaculate taste in movies. In fact, the first 5 are all of my mom's choices, so let's knock those out. First off, we have Air Force One, a really great high-octane thriller starring Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman as the villain. This is one of my mom's favorites, and it's what started her unceasing love of Gary Oldman. You're gonna get a running theme of my mom and a love for airplane-based thrillers, because we have Airport, the Terminal Pack, which is just the best name. Let's be so real. It is the quadrilogy of the Airport movies. I haven't seen them, but I'm sure that if my mom loves them, I will too. Maybe the greatest movie ever made? Or at least the greatest horror movie ever made? Or at least one of the greatest horror movies ever made? Aliens, the special edition. This movie was so strenuous to make that it almost felt like the characters experiencing the alien threat were having a better time than the actors acting the alien threat. But I think that's good. I think that sometimes you need a physical thing to remind you, or a constant thing to remind you of just how hard filmmaking can be. You forget how much just physical work and passion goes into the craft of filmmaking, and that's why DVDs are so important to me. There is no better display of Golden Age of Hollywood acting than All About Eve. It really says something when Marilyn Monroe is the least memorable part of your film, and I say that with all respect and love to Marilyn Monroe. You just can't beat Anne Baxter and Bette Davis. So, funny thing about the movie Armageddon is that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon talk a lot about movies that would not be able to exist today because streaming killed the cultural ability for movies to be low and middle budgeted. That's something I could write a whole doctoral thesis on, but it comes to mind when I'm looking at Armageddon, a firmly decent, could only exist in the 90s type of action romance with a kick-ass tie-in song by Aerosmith. I don't care if it's a meme, I really like it. Also, maybe the best director's commentary of all time. A Beautiful Mind is one of the first DVDs I ever bought for myself. It still has the sticker from the shop because I can't get it off. You're gonna see that a lot. Sorry if those green stickers are annoying. They press them on really hard. But it has an Academy Award worthy performance from Russell Crowe, and one of the just most effective twists I've ever seen in a movie. I still think about it to this day. And of course, it's got a great supporting cast. I love Paul Bettany in basically everything he's in, and it's just so deeply emotional and hopeful. And I also love movies about studying, because I'm a huge studier. Even when they're things that I'm not particularly good at, like math and science, I love movies about academia. So funny enough, one of the sources that I didn't mention for my films was this old dilapidated house was being cleared out, and there was a box of all their DVDs. And I know the construction workers were looking at me crazy because I walked into an Uber carrying about 15 of them, and one of them was Batman Begins. Batman Begins is a movie that means a lot to me because I love practical effects. I have a love-hate relationship with Christopher Nolan films, but I will say that his dedication to practicality is one of the things that I love. Alongside just Batman in general, even if this is not necessarily my preferred version of Batman. For that, you go to Batman Forever. I love camp. I love Val Kilmer. He was my favorite living actor up until his recent passing. I love Nicole Kidman. I love Jim Carrey's performance. This is my favorite Batman movie, and people think I'm kidding until they get a 20-minute presentation on it. Another one that's a bit damaged because it came from that dilapidated house box, Black Swan. I love movies about obsession. More specifically, I love movies about obsession with a craft, with an art. the type of person that can mentally, physically, and emotionally pour themselves into something so much that they completely tear apart their life or tear apart the people in their lives. It's not something I would ever aspire to. It's not something I would ever do because I care too much about healthy relationships and love to ever amount to that. But I am very invested in stories of people like that. Stories like this, stories like Marty Supreme recently, stories like Whiplash. And so this is one that sticks in my mind a lot. Also, I'm a fan of ballet, and also I know it's a ripoff of Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue, another movie that I would love to own one day. We're back on theme with my mom's love of airport movies. This is Con Air. I have seen my brother cry 4 times in my life. 2 times were at films. One of those films was Creed. I remember seeing this in a theater when I was 13 and deciding right then that Ryan Coogler was going to be my favorite director for the rest of my life. Sylvester Stallone's greatest performance, one of Michael B. Jordan's still greatest performances, a love letter to its city, a love letter to the series, a love letter to fatherhood and what that means in all of its forms, a love letter to proving yourself beyond imposter syndrome, and a movie that I really needed at the time, and a movie that I jumped at the chance to own. I saw Ryan Coogler's career coming the second I saw this, and I'm so glad it paid off because I put all my chips in from day one. Everybody's already said everything about The Dark Knight, but one cool thing about owning The Dark Knight is the blurb, which is so funny because it's told from the perspective of Batman, and then there are scratched out pieces that tell the perspective of the Joker. I think that's so incredible that you characterize something as part of your movie by having it infiltrate the physical ownership of the movie. And that's something that's only available from a physical medium. You can't pull that off on streaming. You can't pull that off on television. That's something that only comes with this form of art form in this form of packaging. Continuing with the D's, Dave. A movie I watched during election seasons, a huge comfort movie for me, a form of American optimism that doesn't really exist anymore and could only exist within the constraints of the times it was made. But Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver have such great chemistry. Kevin Kline is so deeply likable that it makes you wish for a world like this again. A world that believed in American collectivism, a world that believed in a slow form of democratic socialism that would just make things better for people. Despite being about the American institution and all the politics therein, it is a surprisingly small and intimate story, and I love small, intimate stories that center themselves on hope. Deja Vu is another one from my mom's collection. I haven't seen it recently enough to give a lot of thoughts about it, but I know it's a decent action flick, and I love Denzel and I love Halle Berry. One of my mom's all-time favorite movies, it's in her top 3, and probably my favorite musical put to screen. I think it's the strongest performances of every actor involved. Anika Noni Rose, Jennifer Hudson, Beyonce, Jamie Foxx, Eddie Murphy. I think it is a testament to the musical, and I think it's a testament to filmmaking. It's the first movie to instill in me that movies are really a thing made by people, and for that I'm really glad I own it. There are 2 movies in the E section. Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I'm putting them together because they both represent wintertime and loneliness for me in a very specific way, in a way that's kind of draining and banal. They're very different movies, but they're both movies about watching 2 people fall apart under very snowy circumstances with very calming music. In fact, Eternal Sunshine has the soundtrack I've most listened to in my life. I'll probably listen to it while editing this. I am in the trenches for Fantastic Four. I saw this movie 4 times in cinemas, and I was obsessed. Like I said, I love movies that star hope, and this is a movie of a fictional world that I would most want to live in. If there was ever a movie that I wish got more attention, it was this. I love the practical effects, and if there was ever a movie that I wish Stan Lee could have lived to be a part of, it's this one. Another pick from my mom, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The ultimate teen movie. There's nothing else I can say about it. This, Fullmetal Alchemist 2003, The complete Blu-ray collection, episodes 1 to 51, is my favorite Blu-ray that I own because it's my favorite anime that I own. I saw it at such a formative age. I saw it with my whole family. It's one of only two animes that I remember watching episode by episode with my entire family present, and it destroyed me in good and bad ways. It redefined what historical fiction could mean to me, what sci-fi could mean to me, what fantasy could mean to me, what devastation could mean to me. It pinned so many philosophical questions against each other and together in so many different ways, and it is part of the reason I physically collect media. It was my one birthday wish for when I turned 23 last year, and it was unavailable anywhere else. And anytime I'm in a rut in life, watching the last episode of This Is What I Do. So I wanted to always have that availability, and now I do. Funny face. I love Audrey Hepburn. I know she considered herself a weak dancer because she grew up doing ballet before the malnutrition of World War II sort of fundamentally changed her body in ways that couldn't keep up with that career, and that's why she became an actress. But she is still absolutely phenomenal dancing with Fred Astaire in some of the best costuming of all time. If I could own her 7-disc collection, I completely would. Gone with the Wind is my mom's favorite movie, and if you want to know why, well, great, I have a whole documentary about it. It's part of this channel, and I'll put it in the link in the description, so you should go watch and comment there to learn about our love for Gone with the Wind, our love for Hattie McDaniel, and our love for film history in general. So one of the videos on this channel is me in a mobile version of the Criterion Closet, and for the public, they recreated that by allowing people to pick any 3 films. And for me, one of those was Good Morning by Yasuhiro Ozu. And I had seen Yasuhiro Ozu's seasonal films, and I had seen, of course, Tokyo Story, but I'd never seen him operate lighthearted, and I'd never seen him operate in color. And boy am I glad that I do have this now. Especially because it has maybe the cutest character in all of cinema, which is the little brother and his little English I love yous. So we talked about Matt Damon and Ben Affleck before. Good Will Hunting, another movie that could only exist in an era that allowed for independence and that allowed for small startups, and a movie carried by its screenplay but also carried by my favorite actor of all time, Robin Williams. So my other favorite actor of all time, like I mentioned with Batman, is Val Kilmer, rest in peace, and this is another one of my mom's films. The most surprised to have found this amongst her possessions, but every time she talks about it, she says expletives that would probably get me taken down from YouTube. So just know that my mom and I really, really love Heat. The next films are going to be a bit of childhood nostalgia. We have How to Train Your Dragon, which is from an era of animation that doesn't exist anymore. DreamWorks is no longer animating in-house, but that sort of 2008 to 2010 era of Ratatouille and WALL-E and How to Train Your Dragon and this dominance of animation on the filmic scene being taken seriously for children and also being seriously taken by adults is just, I don't want to say it doesn't exist anymore, but it certainly doesn't exist in the same extent. And it's a movie I watched a lot as a kid. It's a movie I still adore the visual and sound of, and I think the first one is the strongest of the trilogy, so that's why I own it. You know, someone much older than me made fun of Hugo, and I think it's a ridiculously strong movie. I think it's Martin Scorsese trying to do what the movies it inspired did for him, which is introduce children to old cinema history, and it did that for me. Without this movie, I wouldn't know about Charlie Chaplin. Without this movie, I wouldn't know about Méliès. Without this movie, I wouldn't know about Trip to the Moon. Without this movie, I wouldn't know about the Lumiere brothers. Without this movie, there's possibly a chance that I don't become a filmmaker. Maybe that's exaggerating, but it definitely played a huge part in my formative elementary and middle school mind, learning, once again, filmmaking is an art form constructed by people. This is the most recent addition to the collection, The Iron Giant. I have distinct memory of being in high school and learning about those duck and cover nuclear bomb warnings that they would teach children during the Cold War, and being like, oh, like the Iron Giant. And my high school teacher and the rest of my classmates having no idea what I was talking about as I continued to ramble about this small boy and the hot guy who makes art in the junkyard, who dates his mom, and the giant played by Vin Diesel who goes, I, Superman, and almost bursting into tears. I love this movie dearly. I think it's Brad Bird's magnum opus, and I say that fully aware of the fact that he's behind Ratatouille and The Incredibles, and it's one I've been waiting for a very long time, and it's one that just centers softness, peace, a soul living on after death, and remembering to not jump to conclusions about people, even if those people don't necessarily look the way that you think a person should be defined as, especially in times of war. And that's beautiful, and that's something that needs to be taught to audiences, especially to children. Julie and Julia is, as Anthony Bourdain put it, half of a good movie. It has the Nora Ephron thing of being a good time capsule, but besides that, there's not really anything that draws me to the Julie part, which is why I decided to own it, because the great benefit of DVDs, you can skip to specific scenes without fault, and the specific scenes I watch are of Meryl Streep and Stanley Tucci being a happy married couple as Julia and Paul Child. I wish the whole movie was that, but I'll take what I can get. We're back on Chaplin. The Kid was my second pick from the Criterion Closet. A movie that, despite being 105 years old, still makes me belly laugh and almost cry. A movie that's important for historical purposes. A movie that I want to remake one day, considering its public domain. Rock and roll personified. A Knight's Tale. Do you remember when this would play at night on Nickelodeon? Because I didn't say it before during the Dark Knight section, I'm a Heath Ledger girly. And I love him, I love the music, I love the rest of the supporting cast. Paul Bettany's back, Alan Tudyk. I quote this movie on a regular basis. You'd be surprised how often I can say your entrails will become your extrails. Pain. And things like that. You have been weighed, you have been measured, and you have been found wanting. This movie is definitely not wanting. If anything, I'm wanting for more of this movie. The fun thing about films is that they can be mementos. I saw this, The Labyrinth, recently in theaters for its 40th anniversary run, which was also the 10th anniversary of David Bowie's death, and saw it with my best friend and a couple friends of hers, and got this almost immediately after so that I could always remember her because it's her favorite movie. The wait list for these next two movies was so incredibly long. It took me months to get my hands on the 1994 and 2019 versions of Little Women. The 2019 version is one of my ultimate comfort movies. It's a movie that's a love letter to writing. Like I said, I love movies about people who obsess over art. It has a performance from Laura Dern that I think is one of the strongest in her career, and it's what made me realize the strength of Florence Pugh and Timothée Chalamet and Greta Gerwig in ways that I previously didn't get before seeing it, and I wanted to own it because I had watched it so many times before it moved to a different streaming service. Remember when Nick Cannon was just a cute little guy? I watched this a lot as a kid. It's 2000s black nostalgia. It's teeny bopper, it's dorky, it's sweet, and my mom loves it, and it was actually the last DVD that was in our Panasonic DVD portable player that we still have, and it's right here, and when I opened it up, this was still in there. I want to skip around the alphabet a little bit. We'll go back to M, but we have The Mummy and then National Treasure. Two types of adventure movies that just don't exist anymore, and two types that carry a lot of childhood nostalgia. I only saw National Treasure in bits and pieces until I was a full adult, but The Mummy is one I watched relentlessly. And again, these are two more that I found in that dilapidated house box. I don't know why such a person would leave such amazing media behind, but I'm glad that it ended up in my hands. My Neighbor Totoro. I love Ghibli movies. This one isn't my absolute favorite, but it is one I watch pretty commonly when I'm babysitting. I think nowadays kids, I sound old, kids these days are almost tormented at this point with short form media that kind of fries your brain and doesn't have a lot of substance to it. And this is a movie that has substance. This is a movie that breathes. This is a movie that takes its time, but still encapsulates a level of childhood relatability to anybody involved. And Hayao Miyazaki just carries that forward, and we'll get back to him and some of my other favorite Ghibli movies later. In tandem with The Labyrinth, we have The Never-Ending Story. I got this from a Barnes & Noble's because it was on sale, and watched it pretty recently with a group of my friends. I loved this movie, and seeing them see it for the first time, seeing a group of 20-year-old Gen Zers see this movie and have the same reaction that kids in the 80s would have had, of horror and sadness and delight and whimsy and cheering, really is a testament to its emotional storytelling and to its cinematography and practical effects. Some of the best Muppetry of all time with Falcor and the Rockbiter, and just deeply love this one, and the best matte paintings in the history of cinema. Oceans 11, 12, 13, and 11. The four collection of not only Oceans 11, but the original Oceans 11 by Frank Sinatra and the George Clooney trilogy. I haven't seen all of these. I know that they're great, and I can't wait for a good movie night to get some people around and marathon them all. Continuing with the 4 movies for the price of 1. The Peanuts Collection. This is a movie that spurred me into buying physical media more than anything else, except maybe Fullmetal Alchemist, because when Apple bought Peanuts about 3 years ago, they stopped syndication of A Charlie Brown Christmas and It's a Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown for the first time in 60 years. And this past 2025 Christmas season was the hardest of my entire life. It was the hardest Thanksgiving and Christmas that I've ever had, and I needed the comfort of that normality to share with my mom. So I ordered this from a Walmart, so that they can never take it away from me. Because otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to access it on my TV via piracy. I wouldn't have been able to get it on public television, and I don't have Apple Plus and never will. So that's really says something about the importance that that tender of a moment would not have happened if I didn't constantly have access to this. Rounding out the P's, and the last of my Criterion picks, Wim Wenders' Perfect Days. A movie about slowing down in the age of digitalization. A minimalist ode to the miracle that is the here and now, as the back blurb puts it. Just driven by an exceptionally calm but emotionally deep lead actor by one of my favorite directors. Wim Wenders can do no wrong in my book. Maybe he has. I haven't seen all of his movies, but Paris, Texas, and especially Wings of Desire, one of the greatest movies ever made, one of the just most amazing stories in the history of cinema. So when I heard he had a new film in 2022, I didn't get a chance to see it in theaters, and I didn't want to watch it on Hulu because I didn't want ads interrupting such a calm experience. So I decided to own it for myself, and I'm so glad I did. Moving on to the R's, we have Ray. One that I picked up because my mom really wanted to rewatch it. So funny enough, this was one that I got for my mom, as opposed to the other way around. Roman Holiday. We've established my love of Audrey Hepburn, and also I love Gregory Peck. I think he's one of the most beautiful people ever put to screen, and that can be said of Audrey Hepburn as well. So this is a really sweet and tender and just beautiful little piece. Now everyone knows about this one. Rush Hour, with the interactive menus and the funniest bloopers you've ever seen. This is my childhood copy. I would watch this everywhere. I would watch it portably. I would watch it at my house. I would watch it at the barber shop. I would watch it at my best friend's house when I was a kid, and she was Chinese, so you can imagine the fun that was 2 6-year-old girls, one black, one Chinese, enjoying the fastest hands in the East and the biggest mouth in the West. I think that this movie holds up a lot more than people give it credit for, because I think there's a difference between racist humor and racial humor. And I think because both people in this equation are the butt of the joke, but also the deliverers of the action, that Rush Hour defined an entire generation. The Poseidon Adventure is the Titanic of its day. It's one my mom loves. I haven't seen it, but I can tell there's really something in here with all these booklets because this is a hefty one. You guys, it's the greatest romance of all time. The movie I have watched most in my life. Not my number one favorite movie, but in my top five. Pride and Prejudice, 2005, with Keira Knightley. I could quote it back to front. I have watched it almost every single day since quarantine. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but I really wish I could own the Blu-ray. Unfortunately, this movie is so popular, I could only get my hands on the regular DVD. When I own the Blu-ray and it looks even better, then I will be watching it even more. And also, the director's commentary on this is so inspiring to me because so many shots went wrong. And hearing a director say that and see this movie still get the critical acclaim and the 20-year re-releases that it has is so inspiring to me as a young filmmaker. I could have told you that Sinners was going to get the most nominations of all time. In fact, I said it. My friends can attest. If any of my friends are watching down in the comments, say below that you know for a fact that I watched and said that Sinners would break the record, and then it did. I saw this movie on regular screening. I saw this movie in IMAX, and I saw this movie in 70mm 5 Perth at the Angelica Theater, and just decided I needed to own it immediately after the first time. I marked the day of its release in the calendar and made a whole day of going out to Barnes & Noble's to go get this. And the only complaint I have about it is that it's not enough, because now we have even more behind-the-scenes footage of this masterpiece coming out, and it's not on this Blu-ray. So I need a Blu-ray re-release so I can give Ryan Coogler even more of my money. Steelbox for Silent Voice. Contains both the DVD and the Blu-ray, all the behind-the-scenes, music videos, and of course, different dubs. I believe it not only has English and Japanese, but also Spanish. A movie that is devastating and soft and quiet and life-changing, and maybe the biggest Oscar snub in history, in a way that I can only take when I am in a very specific mindset. But when I am in that mindset, I like to have it readily available. So funny enough, another movie that I found in that dilapidated house box, The Sixth Sense, and I think that's only fitting considering it's a horror movie. And it's a movie that stands up regardless of whether or not you know the big thing about it. Spotlight. The tightest script I've ever seen. And a movie that's so deeply important because it is a movie about taking your time to get information in an age where news is constantly thrown at you, and taking your time to analyze all the facts and not jump to conclusions, and to really pay attention to people who are victims of systems bigger than them. And it is a movie with such simple sets, such simple costuming. It is a movie that puts you only in the strength of the actors and the writing, and to me that is the greatest special effect there is. This is my most recent addition alongside The Iron Giant. I got this about 2 days ago. If you subscribe to this channel and wait a little bit, considering everything going on with my editing software, you will be the first to listen to a podcast called We Didn't Want to Talk About, a show that I'm doing with my very good friend from film school about different types of bombs and cult classics. And the first premiere episode of that, if I can spoil it, will be about Speed Racer, my all-time favorite movie. My super Trekkie mom, I had my own Star Trek continuity, and that was the J.J. Abrams series. I know that these movies are flawed, particularly Into Darkness, but they are movies that I love and hold near and dear to my heart. I jumped at the chance to get the 3-disc collections on Blu-ray, and the fact that I get to own all of these in their greatest form, especially because we won't be getting another one, is really, really something special to me. Also, Chris Pine is the best Chris. So funny enough, I had been planning to make a YouTube channel for years and years. And part of what stopped me, other than just incredible harsh self-criticism that comes with being a perfectionist filmmaker, is the last time that I had an internet presence, I got death threats a lot for saying that Star Wars The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars movie. I think that this movie is masterful. It is heartbreaking and perfect in words that I can't quite describe. Every part of it works for me. Every single part. The only bad thing about this movie is the things that happened after it trying to erase it. I think for me, particularly, I know that John Boyega has a very complicated relationship with his time in Star Wars. I feel like everybody involved in this new trilogy does. But for me, to see a scene of a black man go to a little kid when I was 15 and watch him represent the rebellion and say to this little kid who doesn't have force powers that he knows of, that isn't related to anybody in the Star Wars universe, and say, you can be part of the revolution too. Reset my mind. The same goes for Rose Tico, played by Kelly Marie Tran, and of course Rey, played by the amazing, incomparable Daisy Ridley. I think so much of this movie is about the idea that even if you don't matter, you matter. Even if your name means nothing in the grand space of wherever and whoever you are around, you mean something and you can contribute to something bigger than yourself, so long as you have the hope to do so. And I think that is the theme of Star Wars, and I think that no other movie encapsulates this better than this. Theory of Everything is a movie that I can only watch once a decade. I watched it once when it came out, and I watched it once last year, 11 years later, and sobbed like a baby. When that next decade passes, I'll have to be ready again, and I'll have it at my side. Michael Jackson's This Is It was being sold in the theater, funny enough, because it's a concert film. So they wanted it to feel most like a concert that never got to happen. So you got to buy merch, and I remember standing with my mom on the line to buy the merch afterwards. And it's a movie we haven't rewatched since, but Michael Jackson's fame is the type that can only be defined in a pre-internet era, and can only really be experienced in a pre-internet era. It's a level that doesn't quite exist anymore. No matter how many likes somebody has on Instagram or something, they can never quite reach this. And I don't know if anybody ever should. It doesn't seem mentally healthy, but again, it's a level of perfectionism of a craft, and a level of carrying a legacy on even after the artist is gone. He said this is it, and that was really it though. But we still have this to remember by. To Kill a Mockingbird, again, I think Gregory Peck is one of the best actors to ever do it. This is one I got from a closing down Barnes & Noble's where everything was on sale. I think it was probably the first DVD I ever bought for myself, and one that's filled with the most DVD extras I've ever seen. Some of them are riveting, some of them aren't. This is the 50th anniversary edition, but I think it's important that they all exist, because I think it's one of the most important films and pieces of literature in American history. Touch, an Icelandic-English co-production about an Icelandic gentleman who falls in love with a Japanese girl 50 years ago and goes looking for her during quarantine. And it is a movie that was so strange to me to experience in the best of ways, because it was the first movie I saw in a theater coming home to New York after living in London for 3 years, and so seeing a character go back to London to look for a lost love was so emotionally touching, pun intended. This is a movie about intimacy, and this is a movie about the importance of human connection in a time where human connection was strictly not allowed. And so this being one of the first movies that I saw back at my home, in a home that had finally managed to fully open up theaters, really stuck with me. The Towering Inferno is bulging. It's the booklets and DVD are so huge that I can't close it. But it's one of my mom's favorite films, and it stars one of our favorite actors, one of the greatest to ever do it, Paul Newman. I've only seen it in bits and pieces, but one day I hope that we can watch it together all the way through. Rest in peace, Rob Reiner and Nora Ephron. It's When Harry Met Sally, a movie that I watch every New Year's Eve, given the setting, and a movie that I managed to see in a theater for the first time because of Rob Reiner's unfortunate passing. And it's still just as sharp and romantic and funny as it ever was. It still holds up, and the only thing about it now is that it feels like a memento to two people. I have a friend who this is her favorite movie, so I have it to remember her by, but also it's almost haunting now to hear Nora Ephron and Rob Reiner on the feature-length audio commentary and sound so young and youthful, and to know how tragically both of their stories ended, but to know that they still get to live on in spreading joy through little things like this is why commentaries are so important. I said we would get back to Studio Ghibli. The Wind Rises and Whisper of the Heart. Let's start with The Wind Rises. It was my favorite Studio Ghibli movie for a long time. It was my favorite Hayao Miyazaki movie for a long time until Princess Mononoke beat it out, but they're always in constant competition. I also love Porco Rosso. But The Wind Rises, again, is something about obsession and artistry, and hit me at a really pivotal age. And it's also a movie that tells a story from a perspective that I didn't get a lot as an American of a certain age about a certain era. And so I'm really glad to own it. It's a movie I can watch in Japanese without the subtitles off, not because of my partial understanding of the language, but just because I've watched it so many times that I've memorized every single part of it. And then Whisper of the Heart is my favorite Ghibli movie. I had to differentiate earlier because this one is not directed by Hayao Miyazaki. It's directed by Yoshifumi Kondo, who passed away after it. This is the only movie he ever managed to make. Funny enough, I had gone into the store originally planning to get Princess Mononoke, but then I had to step out, and when I came back in, somebody had already bought it, but this was in its place. And I think that's a sign, and it's just the ultimate comfort movie. And it's the one I've been waiting to find for the longest time. It was the hardest DVD for me to hunt down because it was sold out everywhere, and so it's the one I'm most glad to own, and I got it just last week, so I haven't even had time to fully watch through, so I can't wait to see what this DVD holds in store for me. Rounding out the W's, we have The Wizard of Oz. Perfect movie, can't say much else about it. I will also be releasing a video of me explaining every movie I had to watch for film school to my brother, and we start off with The Wizard of Oz, so if you want more expanded thoughts on that, hit the bell. The last of the DVDs is another Nora Ephron You've Got Mail. What I said before still stands. Sweet, comforting, and a time capsule. Not only of her career and the career of the actors in it, especially Tom Hanks, but of a certain era of the internet. It's so funny to look at a DVD that is promoting the internet before the internet is what takes over DVD. It's a movie that is both ahead of its time and so deeply of its time, and was one of the first ones I bought because it's so autumnal, it's so seasonal, and I started collecting DVDs in the autumn. So that was everything. That was my entire DVD collection. Be sure to subscribe, like I said, for those upcoming videos, and go back and watch the ones that I recommended beforehand. Let me know if you want me to do this on books. Let me know if you want me to do this on CDs. Let me know if you want me to do this on 3DS games. Let me know if you want me to do a video about how I journal. I'm always open to new ideas, and especially tell me what you think of these movies and what you have in your physical collection or want to have.